What's up, everybody? We're back. Welcome to Wicked Crazy Pinfalls. You got your boy Throwback here with his co-host for the NXT show, the Jameus himself, Mr. Chris Parrish, rocking the throat hat. And I've been dying to say this on this show, your new, reigning, defending, undisputed, Wicked Crazy Pinfalls community champion. 3 belts, Drew
That's
Nicholas.
Thank
The
you.
floor
Mr.
is yours,
Hangman.
my friend.
I mean, throwback. I'm sorry. Thank you.
The floor is all yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a long time coming, and I defeated Shane Husky on bodyslam.net. I complained that I should have been the rightful first champion, and WWE screwed me, as they like doing to a lot of people lately. But I got it. I won at whatever pay-per-view was after that, I think. I don't remember the name of it now. Was it WrestleMania Backlash?
Yeah.
And there we go. Oh no, it wasn't WrestleMania Backlash. It was Double or Nothing.
Yeah, Double or Nothing.
Yeah. WrestleMania Backlash, we tied.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember once I said that I tied people to move on into the tournament once. That was when I was being an asshole. But I'm not an asshole anymore, everybody. I'm a
That
good
depends
guy.
on who you ask.
I mean, I still think if you tied, you didn't win,
statement.
so you should have been eliminated. I thought both of you should have been out.
Well, you suck, Chris. So,
I mean, when you're in a wrestling match and you don't win and you both get counted out, you don't get a championship. You just lose the match.
I'm sorry. Where's the title right now? Is it around Chris Parrish's shoulder?
I feel like I should be out of this right now. It's frame with James.
I mean, if we want to talk about actual wrestling rules, we should talk to the guy that's actually been on the PWI Top 500. Just saying. And
I don't give a shit.
Throwback, what did you say my hat was, by the way?
It looks backwards.
Oh, it is backwards, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, I have a team Jameis hates on my head right now. So, yeah.
I hate all Boston teams, whichever one.
Hey, Drew's from Brooklyn.
I agree with that.
I really like the Bruins in 1990 in that Stanley Cup Finals.
Well, we digress anyways, but what are your chances against your next opponent? And on top of that, I still have to go through the results for Money in the Bank and everything else. So here's a good question, champ, and I'll be honest with you. What are your chances against your high point rival that have pretentious verbal spats on this show periodically, Dennis Farrell? And what about the idea of having
properly?
Well, and the idea of having somebody calling their shot at a match at any point against you?
Well, as 3BD, as I've now renamed myself, I
follow him at 3BD.
Yeah, well, 1, 2, 3 belts Drew. Instead of 2 belts Drew. You see, I had to upgrade from last year. I was 2 belts Drew last year, but silly. How silly am I? I have 3 now. So, Dennis Farrell. Now, Dennis Farrell and I have gone back and forth a handful of times, and it's going to be interesting if we do end up meeting up before SummerSlam, which, how poetic. SummerSlam was my demise last year as the king of all worlds, whoever that piece of shit is. The king of all worlds defeated me at SummerSlam, so I had to go away because of my special stipulation of 2 belts of Drew having to acknowledge the king of all worlds, and I think I won. Yes, I won against my former protege, Patrick Mason, to stay in the tournament, and then obviously things happened with the tournament to lead to where we are today. But the last time I faced Dennis Farrell, I was a different man. I was a bad man. But I have since left this life. I am no longer the Roman Reigns acknowledging crazy idiot that thinks that he's a better than everybody person, and I think I'm going to be really interested in seeing how this version of 3BD faces Dennis Farrell. I think it could be more civil. I think there'll be less name calling, less tomatoes thrown at each other.
Oh, so that's fun.
But you never know.
Mm.
Remember,
Considering
these are right next to me. So,
considering you have 4 major rivals and one of them's here too, so I mean, anything can happen. But what are your thoughts on the Money in the Bank Wicked Crazy Pinfalls winner when that gets announced? What are your thoughts on they can call their stipulation and everything in one shot?
who who was involved in that?
Maggie was involved with it. Rob Wilkins was involved. Anakin and Bad Blood.
Okay, so Bad Blood, I know very well. I respect him. He's I can call him a friend now. Around Royal Rumble time, he wanted me to join his team. Unfortunately, I didn't pick his team, so there will be a little bit of bad blood there. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Maggie is a piece of shit, and I hate her guts, but I respect her, and we are good friends now. You know, Maggie, remember, you had said something about getting this first, but that didn't end up.
Drew.
Eat it, Maggie. Eat it.
Oh boy, I'm gonna clip this shit.
Anakin JMT. Now, Anakin JMT.
Where can I find that promo somewhere?
Anakin is
I have to go back.
probably the worst promo I've ever experienced in my life. However, he has heart, and I admire that. But his MJF cosplay, nobody likes a cosplay, please. It's not good. And then I'm forgetting somebody. Who was the fourth person?
You got Rob.
Rob. Now, Rob, I think, is the only person I like out of those 4 people. Rob's just a genuine soul. Rob is he wears his heart on his sleeve. He is an inspirational person, and fun fact, to peel behind the curtain, you liked Mr. Throwback. You liked to peel behind the curtain a lot when I was doing my gimmick, revealing a lot of my stuff. But this one you didn't reveal. I am going to reveal this. A while back, before SummerSlam last year, if you remember, there was a hacker that was hacking my stuff and sending me that letter and all that crazy stuff. Well, the hacker was supposed to be Rob Wilkins. But unfortunately, we just didn't go in that direction. Let me just reiterate to everybody, because I said this after WrestleMania. This title is a legitimately defended title. We do not gimmick stuff. We do not go, oh, okay, we're going to say Drew picked this person and this person, but that's going to lead to them winning or losing. This is not like that. We are legitimate in this tournament. This title is defended just like the BTE title. Okay? However, I had to have some fun with it. So I did my little head of the table of Wicked Crazy Pinfalls gimmick. It was fun. I'm over that. So now I am going to be the good guy, 3BD. And we'll see what happens with Dennis Farrell. And if I win against Dennis Farrell, which That would be really nice. I'm not gonna lie. It would be really nice if I win, but we'll see. I'm not gonna be dirty. I'm going to be straight down the middle. I'm gonna be decent man. One of the four that I would end up facing afterwards, whoever wins the Money in the Bank tournament, good luck to you, because I am a changed man, and I am not the coward that I used to be.
Well, I mean, there's a lot. It's been a long road since that title's actually ended up in Brooklyn. So, I mean, I wouldn't be lying and be proud of saying that you earned that. It's not like one of those things where it's like, yeah, everybody's saying I'm going to take it. No, people earn this. It's not like a whole gimmick thing. But big news coming out today. We're going to TV 14 for WWE. What do you guys think of the change from the end of the PG era? And what are your favorite thoughts of the PG era?
I don't know that there's going to be a drastic change. I know everybody's excited because a certain portion of the internet has been clamoring for the return of the Attitude Era for the better part of a decade. And I'm thinking to myself, you can't push the envelope in the same way, so it's not going to be the same, even if they did present an edgier content. But with the program the way it is, despite the rating restrictions, you can tell great stories within the confines of a TV PG rating, and they opted not to do that. Just because you can do edgier things does not mean a thing if you don't have that commitment to long-term story arcs, and I have no reason to believe that they have commitment to a long-term story arc. And the Attitude Era, for example, you could do cool stuff with the Undertaker character. You could have him shoot a lightning bolt at the ring while Kane's standing in it. You can have Kane light a casket with him and it on fire, but it doesn't mean it wouldn't have meant anything if they hadn't planted the seeds earlier, if they hadn't been telling that story. You can do more to tell stories, but if you're not trying to tell stories and have a sense of, this is our story we're telling, we're committed to it, it's going to make sense, you're not going to have a good product regardless of your rating. So for me, it's cool. I think you can do cool things with it, but I'm not as ecstatic about it as everybody else seems to be, if that makes sense.
I think for me, it's more so like it's a death of an era because they were all hypened up saying they wanted to be PG, but they were still cutting that line of the edge close to the 13 stuff. And now it's like, okay, well, screw it. It's over and done with. And I think as we cover the NXT stuff, that it's going to impact NXT even more. We're going to see a lot more. Didn't I? Yeah.
I texted you like, what are the odds? Toxic Attraction, which I've been saying that for a couple of weeks, that Toxic Attraction Raw is the landing point relatively soon. If you watch the last 3 weeks of our post show, we've discussed that ad nauseum in detail. A lot of excellent discourse on that. So if you want, go check it out. I'll cheap plug our show. But you mentioned that they kind of thread the needle the entire time. Even in the beginning when they were seemingly going all in on it. Right around the time the TV rating changed, they were still doing things such as the CM Punk Jeff Hardy storyline, which isn't the most cognizant of a PG rating. So they had stories, but it was just more of a shift in product presentation and attitude toward the product, more so than we're tightening the screws on everything we do. Kind of in the middle there is when they go all in. I'm thinking Authority Era, 2014's when they fully went all in on that. And there was some good stuff. The Rise of Daniel Bryan, but it wasn't a good product. And then around 2016, they kind of started doing edgier stuff again and tried to think outside the box with a lot of random stuff. For every really bad Bobby Lashley sister segment, you had a really fascinating Bobby Lashley spearing somebody through the new segment. So it's kind of like there's good and there's bad, but they've not been committed to any long-term product this entire era. I'm hoping that's the shift that comes with the TV rating, but I don't think it is. I think that's the network going. Your ratings were at the best when you were here. Let's put you back here, but it's just a different time, different creative, and of course, all of the creative teams just much different now. You don't have people from wrestling backgrounds in 2022 like you did in 1999 or 2005. So,
What are your thoughts, Parish, about the end of the PG era?
I mean, I think it allows a little bit more creativeness from the writers because they're not typecasted into making sure that, are the kids going to like this, because the kids aren't going to be your primary content for your ideas anymore. So that's a benefit, because
it's true.
If you want to tell a story to a child, then that's fine. But when you have like a 27-year-old person watching it, they're going to be like, this is stupid. Why am I watching it? Because not everything a child finds entertaining, you're going to find entertaining 20 years later. So it gives them a little bit more freedom to kind of, be a little bit more mature with their creative, which is, I think, refreshing, because I think like kids nowadays are watching the movies that we're watching in theaters. They're watching the Marvel movies just like we are, and they're just getting just as amped up as we are when we want to go see it. So I think there's going to be a little bit more common ground. I think because of that, you're going to see society kind of ease off on the, do we get triggered very easily? Is this stuff bugging us? Are we going to get sensitive? I think you're going to try to change the norm of society a little bit when they're looking at something like this and saying, okay, this is a little bit more acceptable now. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of things, as society we've learned that, have come and gone. There's going to be a lot more respect, I think, given to women in the sense that we're not going to see bra and panties matches, but we're going to understand that sex does sell. And there's going to be more to that, because that's still going to be a thing. That always was a thing, but you don't want to sell sex to kids because that's inappropriate. But when you're, again, in your teens or, that becomes a little bit more on, your mindset. So we're going to see that a little bit, but we're going to see a little bit more strength, and we're going to understand that women, just because they're sexy, can be strong as well. So I think that's going to be something that we're going to design to see. And I think because of that, a lot more people are going to treat women better because they see it on their TV a little bit more often.
What about you, Champ?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just going around.
Jameis, you can finish your thought. Go ahead.
That's an interesting point on societal autonomy. For me, I feel like we as a society, I love that we can be more accepting and inclusive, but at the same time, one side has taken that and highlighted some. Oh, one person on Twitter said this. They're the only one, but look at what these woke people are trying to do. I feel like society in general, those people that say something like Seinfeld can never get on air right now, are way off base, because Seinfeld's one of the biggest hits on Netflix right now. The idea that society, I don't think society has changed nearly as much in what's acceptable, whereas with the internet being so much larger now than it was 20 years ago, you hear everybody's voices, so nobody's in the echo chamber and everything's more amplified, if that makes any sense. I agree that sex sells, and you're going to see acts like Toxic Attraction, but you're not going to get Mandy Rose in her bra and panties every week. And I think that's the perfect common ground for that, personally.
What about you, Champ?
So I do agree. I think that these ideas that we're talking about are positive in the move to TV14. However, I don't think that they ever needed TV14
I agree.
to be the juggernaut that they really could be when it comes to creative storytelling. Because, like, as Jameis mentioned, as he talked first, since the move to PG, I think it's like 2008, right? That's when that
Sounds about
started.
right.
Yeah.
I came back in 2012 from wrestling. I took a long hiatus, 2000 to 2012, and they were right in the PG era. It was this was the PG era, but the first thing that I saw 12 years after coming back to WWE was Brock Lesnar beating the shit out of John Cena and John Cena bleeding.
Oh.
So now imagine me flipping the channels and coming up to Raw. There was the Raw after Mania 28, I believe.
28 was 2012.
Yeah, so Raw after Mania 28, and I'm seeing this, and this is like, I know nothing about the product at this time, and I'm seeing what I saw 12 years back. I'm like, oh wow, okay, this is cool. I don't know who these people are, but I'm enjoying it. Oh, I know who John Cena was, because John Cena was already in the mainstream at that point. But yeah, I was like, oh, okay, I know John Cena somewhat, and I don't know who this big guy is, but he's a tough guy, and I'm excited to see this. So I started watching. Around this time too, John Laurinaitis was doing the interim
People
GM
power.
stuff, People Power, and I'm like, okay, I know wrestling from when Vince McMahon was the guy, the bad guy who controlled everything and was holding the baby faces down. So I'm just like, hey, this is just like how it was back then. I'm not ashamed to admit I actually liked the John Laurinaitis stuff back then. I'm sorry. It's just when I entered wrestling again, I know it's not really looked at favorably these days. But that's how I came back to wrestling in 2012. So I was never looking at the PG-ness of it until it really started becoming a thing on social media about how anti-PG everybody was and all this stuff. And once I started to really get to know the product and get to know everything from, it's like, oh, okay, obviously it's not the way that it used to be. But they always peppered in these little things, like an Attitude Era style, not with bra and panty stuff, but violence and blood and stuff like that. Just they would not show the blood in the replays or in the video packages, which is what made it different from back then. And they would do the black and white stuff, they wouldn't show color on the videos and stuff. So there are things in the PG era that I loved. I loved the Daniel Bryan run in 2014. I loved SmackDown in 2016 when they did the brand split.
2016 SmackDown's fantastic.
And they did the epic, and I honestly believe, epic rivalry that never was truly, a lid was never truly put on in Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns. The I'm not finished with you
He just launches a chair.
Yeah.
Backing that ambulance into a truck, like an Attitude Era style type thing, and going through the stages and all that stuff that they were doing. That stuff was great, legitimately great. And they didn't need a TV-14 rating for that. So I don't know. My thing is like Logan Hollingsworth said earlier, there's one guy at the top with his one mentality and his version of telling stories. That's what needs to change.
I think one thing that needs to change for me watching the product, I'll read that and answer that in a moment. As a product, it's just one of those things where in the Attitude Era, it wasn't exactly the rating. It was wrestling is at its best. ECW was like this. AEW right now is like this. When it has a feel as if anything can happen, there's a tangible rawness, a grunginess, and everything in WWE is way too polished to where it feels sterile. to a sense. And if that doesn't change, the product itself is not going to get the facelift it needs, even with the rating. And on top of that, every character sounds the same. Drew, you listen to commentary. Michael Cole at the top, great announcer. Tom Phillips sounded just like him. I can't think of his name right now. The guy who does NXT sounds just like
Vic
him.
Joseph.
Vic Joseph.
Yeah,
Jimmy Smith sounds
Wade
just
Barrett
like
too.
him. None of them sound different. All of the characters on the show, no matter what, all sound the same. In the 90s, The Rock did not feel the same way as Steve Austin or The Undertaker or the Outlaws. They all had their own way of doing things, and there's maybe 3 people with a microphone: Kevin Owens, Becky Lynch, and I feel like there's one more I'm just forgetting that I'm gonna kick myself for forgetting later, that don't sound like every other character on the show. And when you don't have a versatile roster in terms of personality, which they do, they just, with the way everything's so cookie cutter, they don't allow it to show through. You're not going to tell interesting stories in everything you do. For me, that it needs to be a tangible change with how they tell stories versus, oh, our rating's different, we can do more with how we currently tell stories.
So we got a couple of questions here from Dark Sage. I posted one a bit, but here we go. It wants to know. It says, "I'm curious. What would it be if what happened if during SummerSlam main event, the fans were not reactive to Brock, Theory, and Roman. They just sat in silence. We know that how WWE loves any reaction they can get, but what do you think would have happened in that scenario?" Stated that, "I always tell fans, if you dislike what they're doing, stop reacting to WWE, to have to change, since, WWE is always a pain in the ass."
I don't
There's
agree
more.
with that, and I'll tell you why. If this was 10, 15 years ago, absolutely would agree with you 100%. But just a couple years ago, the main event of a pay-per-view was Samoa Joe and Roman Reigns, and people walked out in droves, and they didn't change a thing because between a bunch of deals, the Saudi Arabia deal gives them billions of dollars. The Peacock deal, the NBC Universal, just in general, pays them billions of dollars. Fox gives them hundreds of millions. The, the Vince McMahon has already sold his product and his content library to where what he does right now does not matter until these deals are up. He makes his money regardless as to whether the consumer is satisfied or not. So he right now doesn't have to write for the consumer. This may backfire in 5 or 6 years if the consumer is not happy when all of these deals come up. But the odds of Vince being there, just due to his age, not to mention the current scandals, are slim to none. So he's not going to be the one to deal with it. He's sacrificing long-term business for very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Lucrative short-term gains that he can enjoy now. And so right now, the consumer isn't the consumer. They can do Roman versus Brock however many times they want, whether a crowd elicits a response, whether people tune out or not, because they're making money hand over fist regardless. Which, whether you, I'm actually curious as to whether y'all agree or disagree. So, this is fascinating discourse to me.
I do agree with you 100%. As a matter of fact, I remember saying something very similar to this when we did our Christmas show last year. How it's really just that Vince has sold wrestling on the logo, like the W.
Brand.
Everyone knows that W. I bought into it. Look, there's a fucking title up there with a big W on it.
Look at the size of that W.
Yeah, it's as large as it's ever been. It's because wrestling is so niche at this point. It's not, and I honestly don't ever believe that it really will be as mainstream as it used to be. I think wrestling is the niche that it is now that makes a lot of money because there are still a lot of wrestling fans, both with WWE and AEW and Impact. You know, any
New
scope of
Japan
wrestling
is
that's out there
huge
right now.
overseas.
There are a lot of wrestling fans still, but this is still a niche product. So the people who are buying the stuff, buying Peacock for WWE and going to shows, they're fans at heart. Now, I would also say audiences, particularly WWE audiences, as of late, and I mentioned this on the Body Slam, on the Roundtable podcast.
Which, before you continue, the Pro Wrestling Roundtable boys do a terrific job every week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You can watch those on the Body Slam YouTube channel. Support BJ, Shane, and Julian, who do a wonderful job. I just wanted to plug that
Yes,
since it's my
no, that
publication.
they definitely deserve it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The thing is that Vince does not care. At this point, he signed deals with NBC, with Fox, with Saudi. That's how he got his money, and it's exactly. I totally agree with what Jameis said because that is what matters to him. And I said that back then on that Christmas show. He is going to not care about anything at this point because he has already signed the contracts to bring him money. It is a business at the end of the day for him. It's not about supporting the fans. It's about you and he knows that too. By the way, he knows that because he's going to do whatever the fuck he wants on TV, regardless of what the fans say. It's been proven for years. That's what LOL Roman wins and LOL Charlotte wins, and people want other
Oh,
people
Charlotte's the worst.
in the main event. This, he doesn't care. He's made his money because he has investors in
He's writing
NBC,
for
in
an
Fox.
audience of one.
Exactly, him. He is
Right.
the audience of one. He's the audience. This is what he puts out for himself. Now, if the TV 14 thing, going back to that, if he was booking the way that he was booking because of the PG rating, and now things change because of TV 14, okay, I'm willing to sit back and give it a decent, honest review and say, okay, let's see what happens now. But I really don't feel like that's the case.
So the other question is, Sage had is that do you think think WWE could call it audible and change the main event? What did they even bother doing Money in the Bank cash in? The fans decided they were not going to react to the main event. Basically,
I feel
Well,
like we just went over that in explicit detail, don't you think?
we kind of did, yeah. But the thing is that this is already the changed main event because this was not what was supposed to be originally. I don't think that. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I don't feel like Brock was supposed to come back and face
It
Roman
was supposed
again.
to be Randy.
Right. It's supposed to be Randy. So this is already a changed main event from what it was supposed to be, and I think that it was what was it, well, baby belt doing the Money in the Bank cash in. That look, this is muddied waters when it comes to this stuff because I know that there's stuff out there about certain people, particularly the Money in the Bank winner right now, that is not favorable. But WWE doesn't care about that, as is clear. They're with him and with somebody else on the same show who's in a top position. People don't care about these.
Are we talking about the chairman, or are we talking about Matt Riddle?
Well, the second one, but also, I mean, the top guy of the company is also with the scandals right now. So,
Right.
it's like this. It's just not theory. I liked back before all this stuff came out, and it's unfortunate that that happened. And my fandom has changed since then, but I think that him cashing in at SummerSlam, it will probably result in a loss if that happens. I don't actually. I'm honestly. I don't think that it is going to happen at SummerSlam, but I think that he is not going to be a successful cash in.
Here's a story you can tell. So, who is the youngest Money in the Bank winner of all time?
I have no idea.
Theory.
I
Austin
think it
Theory.
was.
Oh,
I was gonna say
So-
before Theory, it was probably Seth.
So right now, it's probably one of the women. Right now, the youngest WWE champion of all time is Brock Lesnar. They're not going to do this.
It's
What
actually
if
Randy
Lesnar
Orton.
wins and he cashes in on Brock Lesnar to break that record?
it's not Brock.
I agree with Paris. It's not Brock. It's Randy.
No, Randy's the youngest world champion, world heavyweight champion. Brock's the youngest WWE champion, which is the current belt, one of the two current belts.
The current title is the WWE World Universal Heavyweight. Like it's a stupid name because they're combined both. But the youngest heavyweight
only
champion in
recognize
WWE
as
history is
WWE
Randy Orton,
champion.
regardless
The
of which title it is.
youngest world champion, including all three, would be Randy, but the youngest WWE champion that they cite as the youngest WWE champion is Brock Lesnar.
Right now, we're arguing semantics with
Yeah,
a
this is
company
splitting
that doesn't
hairs.
know and doesn't care about.
Yeah, exactly.
But they
Like-
care about breaking records, so
I'm gonna say this about anything people say about like these things about Theory or Riddle. The company does care about them. I think it's hilarious when people say the company doesn't care because it totally reflects their public image. They got shareholders and they got investors in this company. Of course they care about this. It is very silly to say they don't because this affects not only the money, but the people investing in the product. But the funny thing is there has been due diligence done by this company that has done this and they've looked into it. And guess what? The thing with Riddle was not true. That's why nothing was happening of it. Thing with Theory was an ongoing investigation. And guess what? It also is not true because people went and dove into the things. The one thing we learned about this Me Too movement is just because you hear something and the internet decides to run with it doesn't make it true because Johnny Depp won his case against Amber Heard. So you got to let both sides play out before we attack one and just assume the final story because the internet says they've read a source. The second thing with WWE, and this is about that main event, I want to know why this guy dislikes this main event so much because he's seen it 100 times. But guess what? It makes money for the company. And that's why it's happening. Because it's a guaranteed money generator every time it does happen. If it didn't draw money, it wouldn't be happening.
I mean, for me, it would be just the whole thing about Roman is that you're going to keep the title on Roman as long as possible. So who out there could actually just knock him off that pedestal? And it's very, very hard to figure that out.
I think that
Yeah,
goes
it's making them a ton of money. So you're going to keep the cash cow going, and he's their big cash cow right now. That's a constant on there. So I mean,
I think there's good
back
5
to my
people that
point
can do it on the
earlier.
WWE roster, and people wouldn't even hesitate.
I think the issue.
You just have to tell the right
and
story
we-
before you pull
and
that
we
trigger.
go
Exactly.
back to the TV14.
Walter being one of them.
What made the Attitude Era so great beyond the rating, and I keep going beyond the rating with that era, which a lot of people just assume it's back because the rating's back, is at the top of the roster when Steve Austin broke his neck. The second time when he got hit by the car with Rikishi, Triple H, that whole fiasco. They had a top of the card where they could put Mick Foley as champion. They could put The Undertaker as champion. They could put The Rock, Triple H, any number of guys as the top champion. The issue now is they don't have that depth and long-term backstory. You could easily hotshot somebody to that, which it seems as though they're trying to do with Theory. Props to them. They need to push somebody. I don't even care who it is. they need to elevate more people up to the top of the card. But the argument that there's not many people that can believably beat Roman right now, it's because you get somebody. Let's use the current Roman Reigns title run as an example. You build up Kevin Owens so well, and then the moment he's done with Roman, he goes right down back to where he was or worse. Same with Finn Balor. Same with Cesaro. Everybody but Seth, more or less. Like, you're building people up, but you're not keeping them built to circle back to it. So, other than Drew Galloway, Drew McIntyre, other than Brock Lesnar, other than these, maybe Seth Rollins, the same 2 or 3 guys that have been at the top of the card already for a long time that people may not be as interested in terms of this is a fresh story. You don't have fresh stories to tell because you haven't built enough people to make an interesting television product around it. And that needs to change with the rating, or else the rating really is irrelevant.
The one thing
I mean,
WWE needs to do a better job at is the long-term storytelling. They can't
I agree.
abort something just because, instantly it's not getting that instant reaction. They got to get rid of this instant. But guess what? That has a lot to do with society nowadays, because society needs instant gratification. And once society gets out of the instant gratification thing, we're going to see a lot less instant storytelling with WWE. I can guarantee that, because WWE is trying to always do something that catches the audience eye. It's not WWE's fault that the casual audience has a memory of a goldfish half the time, because in the real world, they need to look up at Twitter because they couldn't take 10 seconds to think about the answer first. They had to get the instant gratification on Google. That's a big issue with WWE right now, because they're catering. They need to be the forefront. That's what they used to do in the Attitude Era. They didn't worry about what the audience was telling them. They did it, and then they listened to see if the audience liked it, and they kept going with it. It determined whether or not if the audience made a big enough noise about it. It determined whether or not they were going to put it later on in the show in the money spots. The thing is, WWE, they don't have a lot of that, because right now there just isn't a lot of mainstream stars in WWE. But then again, you go and look at AEW, they don't even have one star that looks credible against Brock Lesnar. Not one.
Drew mentioned how WWE and pro wrestling in general is a niche product. Here's the thing. In the world, and you kind of touched on it with the instant gratification, Netflix will start a show. You'll get 2 seasons. It'll be really good. A lot of shows just came to mind. Sensei came to mind. That was the first one. Man, they don't get a finish because the instant gratification happened, and then the story gets left unopened. In a world where so many media conglomerates, if I'm not interested in what throwing out a name here, because I'm never interested. If I'm not interested in Ronda Rousey on my TV, which I'm not, I can go to HBO and I can watch a new episode of whatever show instead of waiting for next week whenever it airs. If I'm not interested in whatever Roman Reigns is doing, I can go to Peacock and turn on a Suits rerun whenever I want. I can just switch from their WWE app to Suits. Like, in a world where we have so many options, it gets overwhelming. I'm not interested in, again, just throwing out a name, I'm not interested in whatever's happening with Ricochet. I can go and I can put on Disney Plus and watch the new Obi-Wan Kenobi show, because there's so many options, and all of these media empires are fighting for your attention. Some do it differently, like Criterion curates old movies. So if I'm in the mood to watch a Betty Davis movie, I can go watch a Betty Davis movie. And then you get Netflix doing all of these originals. You get HBO doing all of these originals, plus old sitcoms and syndication like Friends. It's not cable television anymore, where you had to wait a week or season ends on a cliffhanger. You have to wait until next summer to see it. And for that, you have all of these things. Every product's going to be more niche now. Baseball, I work in baseball media. I hear that it's dying every month. And then the World Series will do the bigger numbers in the NBA. because
Yep.
it combine the echo chamber of certain opinions on different social media accounts, because Twitter has a different voice than Facebook. They're different demographics, so they're going to have different discussion points. Same with TikTok, same with Snapchat. The echo chambers of these, combined with the fact that there are so many options that it's overwhelming, everything except one or two things at a time, which are only in the mainstream for about 3 or 4 months at a time at most, is going to be more niche or more niche, just by the way we are and how big and vast our media consumption has become.
And I could see a lot of people recently, like with the way like Disney does their stuff for their shows, they're doing it the old school way. They're doing it weekly because you want to wait to see what happens. Like I think the Obi-Wan series was like the highest rated rated for streaming for a Disney Plus had ever in years since they started.
Whereas Netflix just throws out the entire season of Ozark at one time.
And that's the thing, though, is just you could binge watch the whole thing, and it's because of the pandemic and stuff. But if you go back to like old school watching Alf and all that stuff, you always had to wait for the next one. And that's why with the whole thing with the pandemic, it was a good thing you could download all this stuff and watch it in one shot. And it's bad because now it's like it doesn't give that, TGIF kind of feeling like you did in the late 90s and
It's like
stuff,
in
and
the
you wanted to
90s,
wait.
you get Ross saying Rachel's name at the altar, and then everybody was pissed that they had to wait 6 months to see what happens. And then
Exactly.
the next season, with the fallout of the Ross and Emily stuff, NBC did numbers. Like that. That doesn't happen today.
Well,
TV
yeah,
was just a
but
different.
here's the problem with that, though, is because people have no self-control nowadays. Tell me if you didn't see 7 episodes of, say, Ozark on there. You can just watch one today and then wait a week to watch the second, wait a week to watch the third.
Right.
90% of people can't do that because there's a lack of self-control. It's not an era thing. It's an individual choice that they just can't do anymore.
And
Because
we have more choices now.
yeah, but still, it's that whole like, no, we need to know, we got to figure it out. Like nobody wants to wait a week to talk about it with their friends at school. No, they need to know the answers to every question right at the instant. As soon as the question's asked, they gotta go with this. I know the answer. I know the answer. I know the answer. That's the problem, because when you know the answer, you're not paying attention to figuring it out. Therefore, you're not actually learning, and that's the thing about translating back to that with storytelling and wrestling. When the people aren't on the edge of their seats because they need to go to whatever site it is to figure out why this happened, they're not allowing themselves to be educated in the investment process
immerse
of a
themselves in the
storyline.
process.
Therefore, they're not enjoying wrestling like they used to, because the internet is giving them that option. Then there's no self-control for them just to say no.
Right. Yeah, and that it's you're definitely right about that, Chris. It's and you can see too, like I haven't like really paid attention to much of WWE programming since WrestleMania, but for a while now, the WWE is not really booking to the next show. The end of Raw or SmackDown is like the end of a series. There's no find out what happens next week on SmackDown, find out what happens next week on Raw, because the start of the show is whatever they'll do. They'll start something with Roman and some person, and then the end of the show is Roman kicking that person, Superman punching that person, whatever. And that's it. That's the end of the show. It's like we're not waiting to drag out the Superman punch. It's happening at the end of that show. So there's no way for anybody.
There's no shock and awe there. It's just all predictable now.
Yeah, it's like, okay, the
Well,
thing
that's
happened
There's
that
no momentum
that
to
could
the
have waited
moment.
weeks. It could have waited weeks to happen. It's happening on the same show.
Like that's just it. Like the momentum is cut down to moment. So instead of understanding the momentum. They just want the moment. It's like basically instead of watching the whole Super Bowl, you're just fast forwarding it to the last play of the game, and you're absolutely taking yourself out of the ride of the whole thing. And
Right.
that is the best part. It's the ride. It's the up and down motion you get as a fan. It's standing up and be like, what the? Oh, okay. Like if you've ever watched Bill Burr and his thing when he gets mad over stupid stuff, he's yelling at something and he's like, oh my God, this is okay, there's a part I need. Right? Like it's simple things. There's no organicness to that. And that's what we all want out of wrestling. It's organic. It's authentic. It's not predictable. It's not, spoilers. It's not any of that. But it's, again, we cannot resist the temptation of seeing what's behind the door. And until you have that resisting ability, you're not going to enjoy the product like you could or you used to, because the internet wasn't around in the 90s, early 90s, right? That's why people
It
enjoyed
was like
wrestling a
around
little bit differently.
95, but yeah.
Yeah, but like it was dial up. It wasn't really what it is now. Like
I did a podcast today that I was really excited to do. A recording for Five Foot Selects Retro Review with Rob, and we covered SummerSlam '91, which a tape of that show is what made me a wrestling fan, even though it took place a decade before I was born. Wow, I'm the youngest person here by a lot. So during this show, we discussed like the Bushwhackers match. Bushwhackers Typhoon Earthquake is not a good match, but you know what it did? It garnered a really good crowd response because at the time things were just a lot simpler. Like the match isn't well worked, but it gave good fun for the time, and that the crowd was there to have a good time. And it's just, we went into that a little bit. It's a different animal now when you can have. The internet's a really good and useful thing, but one of its drawbacks as a society is you're open to everybody's opinion, so you're more likely to be swayed one way from your original. Oh, this was fun,
Well, just think of this. The internet gives you all the information to any question you ever want to know. Yet we're still living a life where we're still yelling at each other during a pandemic instead of, reading something and trying to learn from it. We're still not understanding Black Lives Matter. We still don't understand gender. We still don't understand things. Why? Because people are, instead of going outside, they're staying in on their phone. Right?
Anything that
it's a lazy society that we now share because we don't know how to use something at the proper thing, or we're trying to always be creative and do something that's never been done, and forgetting the fact that the reason why things have been done a certain way is because there's a payoff if you enjoy it that way.
I agree with you. Like today, if we have everything we need to improve society, make it better for everybody, and understand things, and a certain side of it goes, that wasn't the way I remember it 30 years ago. Why are you so woke? Like, why not instead try to open your mind a little bit and change your perspective when everything's right in front of you? I think we're on the same page.
It's why a character like The Undertaker was so good, because for the longest time he chose to give you nothing.
Right.
He always played his character outside of the ring. You didn't know a lot about him. And then all of a sudden, when he retired and all this information comes in, boom, big numbers. Why? Because he made you want it. Kayfabe is... when I hear people say kayfabe's dead, I'm like, no, kayfabe is not dead. You just can't resist the urge of talking to a fan and telling them, oh, stay here. Oh, you want to leave? Oh no, I'm going to win the title. You want to stay? Like that's like, the problem.
Guys like Orange Cassidy, who's always in character, or Max Friedman, who's always in character. that Cody Rhodes, when he was Stardust, was great at that. Surprisingly,
Yeah.
which is so silly in hindsight. But it's the commitment to those characters that
And how much
I
flack did
believe that.
MJF get because he was a dick to people? Over
Right.
time,
Mhm.
people saw that it was entertainment and they didn't care and they enjoyed it. That's me. That's me saying that there's proof that the fans don't need to know every little detail and still enjoy the product. Why? Because
That's why a
MJF
lot
did
of
it in today's day and age. Chris Jericho can still debut somewhere and you had no idea about it.
And on top of that, a lot of people nowadays, with like everything so connected and plugged in, the emotional side of it, like people are so intuitive with social media and stuff like that, and especially in wrestling, it's just a lot of us have to like get away from everything and put it all down and stuff. Like I'll get notifications on my phone all day about stuff, and half the time I just don't want to look at my phone unless my girl's calling me. So it's just it's a society where it's like smart stuff all around us, which is great. It helps us to be very sheltered and protective. But there are days where when my son comes out, I'll be like, hey, you don't know what ding dong ditch is. You don't know what Relivio extreme hide and seek is. I climb up on a freaking attic ceiling just to get away from people, on a garage ceiling just to hide for people for hide and seek. I mean, you don't know like what wiffle ball it is when you play
You
with
don't
your
know what
friends
it's
going
like
outside
to go with
You
your
don't-
friends to the edge of the street and sit on that
on the stoop.
Yeah, that.
Like you don't know how to, like, you're sitting on a stoop or something like that,
Mhm.
or if you're in Boston and you go down and you take the train in to go to just walk around with friends, or you don't know what it's like to go to Brooklyn and go down to Times Square for a little bit and just be somebody who's disconnected and just you're a tourist in your own backyard, as they say.
One of the
And
greatest
it's the
lines.
same thing with wrestling too. You can't be a fan without having a device plugged in and having everybody going in there. This format's fine. Everything else we do is amazing. It's just sometimes I wish people would just disconnect from certain things and then let it be and come back and be completely surprised.
I was asked a question as to last year, and I do a lot of festivals, I do a lot of concerts. I finally got to see Metallica twice. I got them front row twice.
Yeah, buddy.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
dude! I rarely scream like a girl. I screamed like a girl when Kirk Hammett looked me straight in the eyes while he did the solo to Four Horsemen.
So
But
throw
somebody asked me, and they're like, why didn't you video the show? And I'm thinking to myself, why did I pay this much for tickets to look through a screen the entire time? I took my picture while they were playing Seek and Destroy. I put it on Instagram later, but other than that, my phone was in my pocket the whole time. Like, I paid to enjoy the show. I'm going to disconnect from the outside world. I'm not going to let any text I may get, ruin my time. I'm here to see Metallica.
I mean, for me, with the ROH show coming up in like 2 weeks, right?
Right.
I am gonna be having my phone on me and stuff like that. My girl's 35 weeks pregnant right now. You don't think I'm gonna have my phone on me and check
You
it
better have your phone
periodically?
on you.
Oh, damn straight.
Even
But
I
I
know
am,
that would be a big no-no to turn your phone off in that moment.
but I am
Come
gonna
on,
tweet
tell her
like,
to call directory.
oh no. But I'm gonna text certain things about the ROH show, like my opinion of it, because there's a 5-second delay. But am I going to take pictures of it and stuff like that? Yeah, but I'll post it the next day. It's not like I'm going to sit there and I'll take all the videos and the photos that I have of mine, and then I'll just post the photos of it later on Sunday when I'm here at work, when I'm watching Parrish do Sunday brunch and stuff like that.
During the pandemic, when I live in Jacksonville, for those who don't know. So
Tampa.
I'm at Daly's place and the stadium a lot, just in general, because it's my backyard, more or less. So during the pandemic, when AEW started running all of the shows there out of necessity and opened it up to partial crowds, every big show, I was there. Sting's winner is coming when Kenny won the title and Sting debuted, or the Brody tribute show, or Double or Nothing when with the triple threat. Any big show, I was in the audience. But I went with a group of friends, and we always took a picture outside of the venue. But other than that, we didn't take pictures. And now that group of friends, I'm the only person that's still friends with all of them because you know how college drama can be. Oh. But I'm glad I have those memories with my friends as opposed to, hey, look at all these pictures I took. I enjoyed the company and the atmosphere of being at a live wrestling show to de-stress during a pandemic and being fortunate to be able to do that with safety precautions, always masked, vaxxed the moment I could get it. Social distance, Daly's Place was great with that. But I was still able to be in that environment to de-stress, decompress, and other people didn't get to do that. And I have all of those memories with my friends that a picture doesn't show you.
Throwback.
Well,
I want to
and-
go back to one thing you said about disconnect.
I'll be
We
right
cannot
back.
hear you. Oh, okay. Go and watch Tyler Bree's interview with Chris Van Vliet, I believe it was, after he got released. One of the best perspectives, and throwback, you have seen me on Love Wrestling for the last year and a half. I've always beat down. Wrestling is always about perspective. Life is always about perspective. Tyler Breeze did not give two shits about getting released. Why? Because he saw the glass the way he wanted to. He was very humbled with the opportunities he got. Hell, guys like Juice and Thunder Liger did one match in WWE, and it was with him, and it was his request to work him. How do you not get humbled by that? Two,
Yeah.
he always said, one of the reasons why I am okay now, because I am not attached to the Tyler Breeze character. I can be Matt Clement right now. And I can just be fine, because you got to be able to attach something and let it go and understand that that was part of where you are now. So if I want to do something next, yeah, this had an opportunity, and this gave me a chance to be who I am now, to get this opportunity. But with that being said, he's like, if I can go back, great. If not, it's fine, because I got to do something very few amount of people got to do. And it was just such a great perspective. Why? Because he's able to detach himself from the ego that you get in wrestling. And anybody who says they don't have an ego in wrestling probably has a giant ego themselves. Because that's the one thing I can't stand in wrestling, and it's just a thing. Everyone has an ego. I have an ego. Everyone has an ego. Everyone in life has an ego. They just don't know it. You go to a job, you think you're better than someone, you have a different race. That's an ego, right? Like, but the
I
one
do
thing
not
you
have
got to
an
be
ego.
able to,
What are you talking about?
how many titles do you have? Because belts hold up your waist. How many titles do you have, or championships?
One that matters. That's it. Fuck those other ones. I don't care about those anymore.
No, but even in that, like in that one phrase, it's like when that matters, right? Like really, a title in wrestling doesn't. It's a prop, right? And when you hear Jim Ross say that in a seminar, it's a mind-boggling, eye-opening
Especially
response.
since when I think of Jim Ross calls, I'm thinking of Judgment Day 1998 when he's like, anybody who's anybody, you have to wear that gold. And he would always put it on this pedestal in the way he described it.
Well, and
on
that's
television.
just it. That's him doing his job, because he's
Of
making
course.
what you see important, and that's the beauty of what they do. That's the thing about wrestling that makes it great, is because it's
I
the
agree.
world.
I'm just
Tried
saying
to
that
make
from a
wrestling
positive.
the real world, and believe me, Mike Mizanin was not funny nor entertaining in the real world, pun intended, by the way. But The Miz is a Hall of Fame sports entertainer / professional wrestler.
That may have won at life.
And when we talk about Theory being Money in the Bank, think about this. He is 2022's version of The Miz because nobody believes he can successfully cash it in. But then the moment that Miz cashed it in on Randy Orton,
that
eyes opened. Just imagine if Theory cashed it in on Brock Lesnar and won the title. Think about that. And think about what you're going to react to after, because it's going to be hard to process it, but you're always going to have your jaw drop and be like, holy shit, Theory you're going to, as soon as you say it, Theory beat Brock Lesnar to become WWE World Universal Champion or whatever the hell they're saying it now. You're talking it into existence and then you're slowly believing in it. Therefore, the perception you have on Theory becomes more legitimized as a champion.
But
Just
you could
like it
also
did
flip
when Miz
that
won it.
too. You could also flip that too with
Look
Liv
at
because
CM Punk.
how many?
Yeah.
Let's be honest, right? How many people thought Liv would have beat Ronda for the SmackDown Women's Champion about a month ago, and it took the Money in the Bank briefcase and cashing it at the same night, and now she is the SmackDown Women's Champion without her own plates on that belt, mind you. We'll find out tomorrow. But
Throwback, thank you for seeing where I was going with this. I appreciate that.
But the thing also is that there's also one cash in we don't talk about, and that's the heist of the century in wrestling, and that's the San Francisco WrestleMania. I don't know the number off of it, where Brock
31.
and Roman were going at each other.
31 is the
31,
first one
but-
they didn't use Roman numerals on.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just one of those things that it ties into everything we talk about. It's just we're in a society where everybody needs to know everything. There's no, like, the whole thing, kayfabe's dead. Well, kayfabe was the one reason why fans kept wanting to know more. And now you just get the results sometimes out of nowhere because people spoil it.
If kayfabe's
throw
dead,
back.
is everybody so interested in whether or not MJF is working the system or if he's actually mad? If kayfabe's dead, why are we still asking those questions?
Exactly.
Hey,
It's
throwback.
not dead. People are just lazy and forget how to do it correctly. And yeah, that's me shooting on the professional wrestlers because not every professional wrestler knows creatively how to get over in the right way. When we talk about, creative didn't have the right idea about them or they didn't do it, creative doesn't have to do anything for you. It's all on the worker to do it for themselves. Creative just gives you a lane and you're the one that has to drive through it and carve that path. John
Becky
Cena
Lynch
got more bad ideas, but because he's fucking good and one of the GOATs of professional wrestling, he made it amazing.
Becky Lynch has given a lot of bad story ideas, but you know who gets everything over? Becky Lynch. I use this example to show how good of a professional wrestler Jon Moxley and Chris Jericho is. But they gave Dean Ambrose and Chris Jericho a potted plant and got people invested in an inanimate plant because they're good at what they do.
Got an imaginary person over.
You believe if you believe in your product, even
we
if it's
believe during the
objectively
Johnny
bad.
Knoxville match that Mae Young's child grew up and made the WrestleMania debut.
Hey, throwback.
Yeah.
This is way out of left field. Can I have a banana?
Yeah, I know, huh?
I was wondering what that text was about.
One of the kids got a Minions toy, the squeaky toy, one of the stress ball ones, and literally it's sitting underneath a whole thing of hanging bananas.
My favorite thing about Minions is that scene in Superstore. I don't know if y'all have seen it, but it's pretty much a show about working retail, where Ben Feldman and America Ferrera have to promote Despicable Me movie, so the store makes them dress up as minions, and just you see these giant faces, and then you hear America Ferrera go, "I'm getting a divorce," and then Big Mama looks at her, but because he's in a Minions costume, you just see this giant Minion smile. It's so stupid.
I want to ask
All right.
everyone: can you name 5 people that Can you actually name 5 people that you think can believably beat Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar for that championship?
Okay, Drew Galloway,
Lashley.
Mhm.
Bobby Lashley.
Thank you, because that wasn't mentioned before, and I think it damn well should be.
I agree. If you had given me a list of 5 before, I would have absolutely said his name. Galloway, Lashley. It depends. Are we talking like just in general, like head to head, or are we talking built up in story?
If they beat them, do you believe it?
Gunther.
You can make me believe
Thank
anybody,
you.
but anybody
Thank you.
because it's wrestling. But Walter is one. Matt Riddle is one. I believe Matt Riddle could take almost anybody in a fight.
I'll
He
throw a
has the
dark horse
background.
name in there. I'll throw a dark horse name and one just for fun. I think Ciampa could, if built right. I think could go. Him and Roman could make it something great.
Anybody could have
Um,
built right. It's wrestling.
I think.
But
but just given what their stock is to you right now.
Oh, I'm not
Because,
saying Reginald could beat Roman Reigns tomorrow.
I
That's
want to put a
Rollins,
name
that's
out there
fine.
that's
Dude, the
on the
Hurricane
women's
beat The
side. That
Rock. We get it. It's wrestling, and narratives can be whatever they want it to be. That's the beauty about pro wrestling. But given the stock that everybody is, nobody's going to believe, say, R-Truth is going to beat Roman Reigns. Nobody's going to buy that.
I'll throw a
Oh,
name out there
they're going
just
to
for
do
fun. I'll just throw a name on it just to get a rise from people. Why not one of the 4 horsewomen? Why not Bailey? Just to see the
Don't
rise
even get
out
me
of
started
that.
on intergender wrestling and how it's a failure in pro wrestling right now.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying you said 5 people. I just want to make one name out there that just would make everybody be like, that will never happen and stuff, but it'd be fun to watch.
You know who would be fun to see? Like, I said this when AJ Styles was champion. I meant it more tongue in cheek, but I would love to see a guy like AJ Styles bump for Asuka just because it seems like it's such a fun visual. Like that would never happen, but in terms of stuff that would never happen, that I would like to see that is something.
I know one match I want badly to come back, and because they had killer matches when he came into WWE, and that's AJ and Roman.
Yeah. Those 2 matches were really solid.
Even AJ versus Brock was one of the best once-a-year Brock matches that we would get.
Brock's best opponents for me,
smaller guys.
In-ring narrative. Bryan Danielson, Kurt Angle, AJ Styles, guys like that. Those are the guys Brock works best with, not guys like Roman Reigns or Drew McIntyre.
It's a smaller workhorse guys. It'd be like the Eddie Guerreros. Regardless of
Eddie Guerrero's a great name.
Hill you want to say, the Chris Benoit's always had great matches with him. Chris Jericho had great matches. Randy Orton had a great match with him. Rey Mysterio had a great match with Brock Lesnar. Why? Because they're storytellers.
Paul London in his SmackDown debut had a really fun match with Brock Lesnar for the title.
So we're going to wrap around this stuff up, and I got one last question for him. We'll start with the champ. Ring of Honor's in 2 weeks here in Massachusetts in Lowell. I will be there. I was praying I could get my buddy who is the champion there, but that didn't work out. So
yeah, it's not going to happen.
But so who do you guys think at Ring of Honor's Dishonor show is going to be a surprise that they're just going to bring out of nowhere?
I mean, Homicide would be a great surprise. Christopher Daniels would be a great surprise.
You know who would be great? Chris Hero.
Bray Wyatt would be a great surprise.
Oh, dude, I would literally freaking...
I'm very jealous.
I would literally be calling Drew and letting him hear the theme music right there on the spot.
I could see Motor City would be a fun surprise.
I honestly have one name that two names actually nobody's been saying at all, and I wouldn't be shocked. It would be Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae showing up at ROH.
I
They're
don't
good
think
fits
Johnny
for-
Gargano. Well, and here's why I'm saying this won't happen. Johnny Gargano has flat out said he wants to watch his child grow up a little bit, and like for the first couple of years, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Johnny Gargano or Candice LeRae for a while, like
And with
over a
that,
year, a while. And
with
I
that,
think Johnny Gargano still wants to stay in WWE.
so with that being said, we're gonna wrap up here. We got an hour and 17 minutes into this. We'll start the way we usually do. So, Parrish, tell them where they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter at Chris Parrish, Instagram Chris.Parrish, and you can follow me on Twitch at the Chris Parrish, which it's funny because I have no content, but that's okay because I am the crowned very first ever non-continental champion. That's right, non-continental as in non-content. You can always follow me. I love wrestling. I'll be on Sunday Brunch this Sunday with Bobby Money Munson, and we'll be doing what the brunch busters do because brunching makes us feel good. Make sure you
That's a
check
play on the
out
Brain
Love
Busters,
Wrestling CA on Twitch. Love Wrestling Sunday Brunch.
Hopefully, I can when I go on leave, maybe I could see if I could pop in with you guys for a little bit on a Sunday because I'll be off for 2 months.
If you
My
ever want me to
co-host.
pop in,
So, Jameis, tell them where they can find you.
you can find me at the Jameus, which is right below my moderately attractive face. Got to keep myself humble. So at the Jameis on Twitter, I tweet a lot of random stuff, but for my wrestling stuff, you can find me on BodySlamNet. I am an editor, occasional news, but more so I'm editing our stuff. I produce a lot of our podcasts. I produce the NXT post show with my boy Patrick every week. I'm also on screen for that. I produce our Ring of Honor podcast, who do great work. I host and produce the Excellently Executed podcast, where we take a wrestling maneuver and we break down how it fits into different psychologies and different variations, how you can work it within sequences, stuff like that. It's a really cool show. I do a lot of stuff. Today I recorded an interview. Today I recorded retro review with Rob Wilkins covering SummerSlam 1991, which will air soon on Fightful Select. So be sure to check that out. I've got a lot of cool stuff coming up too that will be announced on my Twitter in the coming days. So be on the lookout for that.
Hey, champ, the camp champ, as they would say in one of the great movies. Tell them where they can find you, my friend.
You can find me at Big Money Drew on Twitter, and I don't do anything else really at the moment. I'm gonna be working on maybe getting another Fightful Overbooked thing. Keeping hush about it because I won't say anything yet. But I'm gonna talk to Joe Pearl about it. And I'll be, whenever there's a show on this channel on Thursdays, and I'm still holding this. Even whenever, if I'm not holding this anymore, I still try to, make it for when we do shows. So yeah, at Big Money Drew on Twitter. I do some stuff for Fightful sometimes. I've been on Coexisting. I've been on some Fightful Overbooked shows, hit and misses. If you go there to Fightful Overbooked, and sometimes I cover the super chats and humper chats that we have on Fightful. I collect them for the shows for whoever's running a show. I just did it for Listen Your Boy yesterday. That was fun, and yeah, so. Follow the great people of Fightful. Follow all the lovely people here. And Dennis Farrell, I'll see you soon.
Other than that, every Tuesday night on bodyslam.net, NXT post show with me and the Jameis. Wicked Crazy Pinfalls. Here, every time we get a chance on a Thursday night, we'll pop in Hopefully when I go on live, we'll keep it weekly. It's just been scarce with life and everything going on. A newborn and getting all prepped up for that. Uncle Drew's got to be all
Congratulations
excited
again.
about that too. We got a lot of stuff going on. I'll be if you guys are in the Massachusetts area in Lowell, you can DM me. I will be at the Ring of Honor show with my girlfriend's son. So, there'll be a 12-year-old running around, a minion running around. If you're there, whether you want to say hi, I'll have a Wicked Crazy Pinfalls t-shirt on there and stuff like that. Come by, tap me on the head. If you want to take a picture and we can talk wrestling and talk about the show a little bit, we can. I will be there. I'm excited. It's my first actual wrestling show since 1994. And I'm talking about me not working at the venue when I did or anything. It's me actually getting to sit and enjoy it. And I have pretty good seats for this first amount of money I paid for, which is like $33 each. So other than that, go check out the Twitch, youtube.com/throwback27, and just check us all out here. Every one of us does amazing work. Body Slam, Fightful, love wrestling. Hell, if Parrish gets back doing wrestling and stuff again in the next couple of weeks when he can, go check out that stuff too. Everybody does great work as a community, and we have a champion that's there ready to defend it. So if you guys want it, come and get it. So do a good deed, pay for it, and have a good night.